For me, when we shipped Mass Effect 3, probably more precisely when we shipped Citadel, it felt like we put a bow on that and we tied up the trilogy. We always meant that trilogy to have a start and an ending to it. I think it's fair to say the ending didn't go the way we wanted, but ultimately it was an ending. And it does feel like that is a sort of complete package. And I think even just in the visioning of Andromeda, obviously there's all these elements of the original trilogy we really want to hold on to, but at the same time, I think so much of the magic from the first game came from looking forward and just imagining, what could we do? And anything was possible at that point. There was no Mass Effect. We could do whatever we wanted. I want especially this team to feel like they had that sort of freedom to be able to do that so that they could focus on, what is possible as opposed to, okay, well, but we did it this way before, we have to do it that way. It's like, okay, well, we can have that discussion. But let's also be forward thinking and let's really use our imaginations. Like, what would you as a fan be excited about seeing? That's one of the things that's interesting about working on this team is that for the first time ever, we actually have a large proportion of fans from the trilogy working on the next game. A lot of people came here, they've played the trilogy, and that's why they're here. They're excited to do that. Their sort of view of what Mass Effect was is very pure. They didn't see the sausage getting made like I've seen the sausage getting made. So they just had this sort of very purest vision of what Mass Effect is, this sort of the spirit of Mass Effect. And I think that's the most important thing to retain. Like, let's retain the spirit of Mass Effect, but let's also be, adventurous ourselves and challenge ourselves to really, do something. It's been a long time since the last Mass Effect. Let's make this something special and memorable.
What did you learn from the team? What were they emphasizing that was maybe surprising to you?
That's a good question too. I think a lot of the team remembers the characters and the character moments. And honestly, I think that's one of the things that I took away from the trilogy as well. We're at BioWare, we're very focused on story first, right? To me, what I started to realize over the course of that trilogy was, yes, the story is important. Certainly the plot is important. The setting is important. But it's the characters that people love. It's the characters that people remember. And they have to be caught up in something special and interesting. But that's really where it needs to start. And that's actually where I think a lot of the confidence came from for this team was, we can make amazing characters. Like, what amazing characters look like. And that's also where a lot of that sort of freedom came from, which is, okay, well, if we were going to populate this new Mass Effect Andromeda with characters, what would they look like? And then that gets the ball rolling. People start talking about that rather than being too concerned about, oh, is this plot, as exciting as the last plot, or is this story going to be as epic as the last story? It's like, well, let's actually start with characters and do that. And I think that a lot of our early development was around the characters, and that's really helped out.
What are the lessons? What are the takeaways then? Like, how do you take that broad thought and boil it down to these are the keys to making good characters?
The keys to making good characters. This is going to sound really trite, but what I always tell people with when they're developing new characters is to write what you know. If you go outside of your comfort bounds, your comfort zone, and try to sort of imagine what a character would be like, and you have no experience with that, I find you can tell. It's like that doesn't ring true, right? So, and also each writer will bring their own unique flair and their unique style, and that's the way we've always done it in the past, which is don't try to say every character has to be like X or Y or Z. I use Z for the Canadians out there. But what style do you bring to it? As long as it's within the range, as long as it's within the right tone and style of what we're trying to do in the game, it's like just bring what you've got, and that's where our characters have traditionally come to life. And of course, it's I'm talking a lot about the writing. It's not just that. There's so much more to our characters, more now than ever. Like when you look at how they come across in Frostbite, they look amazing, right? So I think one of the other things that we've learned over time is go back to, Baldur's Gate days, Neverwinter Nights days. You had these little tiny pixels on the screen. Maybe you got a little, 2D image of them, a little bit of VO. That was it. Everything else was the dialogue. That's what sold it for you, and your imagination, right? Almost like a book. Nowadays, we've got a Asari that we've seen so far, and we now know her name is PB, but she was just a smiling Asari. But she already had, a persona with our fans just based off of her animations and the way she looked, right? And that was brought to life with some of the things we can do with our characters now, which we just haven't been able to really sell before, and it's amazing.
So when you say write what you know, is that just a matter of like, hey, I think this Krogan kind of reminds me of my dad, or I want this Quarian to feel like an old high school friend? Is it as simple as that?
It can be. I think a lot of times we draw from what are the characters that we've loved in other fiction, right? Even when I was writing Garrus or Arya or the Elusive Man back on the trilogy, a lot of times I would draw, there would be an initial sort of imagining of what the character was. It might start with a concept. I'm like, okay, cool, I like that. And then I'd get a voice in my head, usually is what it was, the good kind of voice of what they would sound like. And I would start writing to that voice, and eventually you realize, oh yeah, that kind of sounds like this character and that character together, and it kind of congeals. The process I find for writing characters is one that evolves over time. Certainly for the larger characters, you'll start down a path, and then you'll kind of just find that zone, and then you come back to it and just make sure it all fits.
So if the message from the team, which are fans, and then the larger fan base is, we want characters, we want personality, what's your sense of what they want from the big picture story?
You know, I think a lot of them really loved the adventure that you were able to go on with Shepard, but even internally and through focus tests, everything we're seeing is that people were generally okay. It's like, now I'm ready for a new hero. We were going to do that, but we were actually hearing that also as well, which is positive. And I think another thing that came out, that while the people love the choices that matter, and they love some of the darker things that happened in the series, if we were going to explore in this new galaxy and we wanted the player to feel like they were going to explore, I think people were saying, don't make me feel like if I go off and do this little side quest, I'm letting the universe burn, right? That led us to thinking more about a slightly lighter tone. There's still going to be stakes. There's going to be huge stakes in this game. You as the Pathfinder, humanity in Andromeda is relying on you to find a home for them. If you don't do that, humanity will cease to exist there. That's big stakes. At the same time, it's a little different than if you have 50,000 years, the entire galaxy gets level set. Maybe you should get on that, Shepard, right? So it's a matter of degrees, right? Another term I like to use is it's a bit more adventurous. I want to just go and explore. I want to see what's over that hill. I want to see if I can take on that large enemy over there. It's just a bit more of that youthful sort of energy. This isn't, a seasoned team that's going out. Yeah, we know we've been there, we've done it. It's more of a, I don't know what that's going to be like. Well, let's go find out.
You guys talk about just the pressure the new team might feel to live up to that ocean of a fan base you guys have accumulated? Because I'm sure they're also aware that the ocean can have a weird riptide at times where the fans want to take it a different direction than the team does.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a push and pull with the team. They are all excited to be working on Mass Effect. At the same time, they feel a great sort of burden around that, and it's just like, well, this has to live up to what Mass Effect is. And honestly, the best thing I can offer them is I just say, look, I'm not going to let this not feel like Mass Effect. I was there, and there's other people on this team who are there, and we can look to those people and say, can you help guide us and make sure we don't go off the rails? But in the meantime, just let your imaginations run wild. And it's difficult. Mass Effect is highly critically acclaimed. It's our fans, obviously care deeply about it. We don't want to screw it up. But the other thing is, we've never succeeded by worrying about that in a negative way. We've always succeeded at that by saying, look, let's just do the best that we can with what we've got and tell the most amazing stories, give them the best player experiences that we can. And I think that's something that's always stayed true at BioWare and on this team. So I'm pretty confident that the team is they'll get there. They're just stressed about it, but sure, we'll get there.
I mean, you've been thinking about this series for close to a decade now. So we talked about what the fans want to do with it and where they want to bring it, but what excites you? Where did you want to push it specifically?
For me, I think it did come down to, I was interested in telling a story in the Mass Effect universe because it's so big, but a story unlike one that we had told before with characters unlike the characters we'd told before. So to me, I talked a bit about the hero's journey. Shepard kind of came on the scene on Mass Effect 1, and it felt like they'd already accomplished a lot, and they'd done a lot, and they'd seen a lot, but I hadn't. It was new to me. The whole universe was new to me. And so there was a bit of a disconnect between me and my player character, right from the start. And so with this, I thought I'd really like us to close that gap as much as we can, without going full amnesia, doing something where my character is experiencing things for the first time at the same time I'm experiencing things for the first time. I just think that's a great story to tell. And Shepard is very much like a hero that became a legend. I wanted to sort of tell the story of someone who's just never really done this before, and they're kind of a fish out of water, and how do we do it, right? And taking it to Andromeda, it sort of fulfilled a lot of that. That's a lot of the story stuff. For me, I think when I think back on the UNCs and the Mako from a player experience, there wasn't much there. I mean, if you were like me and you just were happy driving, you were golden. That was it. There's the odd combat there, but it didn't really fulfill itself. And then we tried to push that a bit in ME2, and then by ME3 we just kind of dropped it and left it, right? And that always felt like something that I thought we could nail. Maybe not back then, but it's something that we should focus on. And that's what we're really sort of starting to push, is that more open world experience, but one that has the level of quality in those encounters and the things that you would find on those planets, and even just the story of each of those planets that you would come to expect in any mission that you'd experience in Mass Effect.
That's quite a challenge.
It is. It's a huge challenge, and I think right now we've had a few iterations throughout the course of the game, trying to narrow in on what that looks like and how to do that. Now, we feel really confident about the way we're going, and it's just, all right, let's just build out those worlds. They're big worlds, and everybody's just putting content on them as fast as they can and testing and everything. And the end is in sight, but it's been a challenge.
Is there a message you want to convey to fans? Something you feel like they're worried about that you want to drive home?
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's something specific that fans are worried about, but I can say, honestly, every time we get this in front of fans, and we've been doing different groups, some focus testing, some game changer stuff, and we always try to incorporate existing fans of the franchise in. The resounding feedback is, oh, this is awesome, this feels like Mass Effect. They always have questions about the things that have changed. Once they get the answers to those questions, then they're like, okay, great, and they move on. So if any fans are worried that this, is going to veer too much in a direction, I don't think they should ever worry about that. But the other thing is that they should be excited that, this is going to feel like, in many ways, Mass Effect 1 again. Like, you'll be able to experience things for the first time again. And that was our goal, because we didn't want to just retread ground and make it feel like this was Mass Effect 4. We wanted this to feel fresh. We wanted it to be a new start for fans and for people who've never played before. If you haven't, played the series, you can come in. You don't need to know anything. That's great. Just get in there and play, and everything will be explained. And we brought everything forward to this console generation on Frostbite. It's an amazing, fresh experience.